What's going on, YouTube? Gonna do an updated video on my '07 Grand Cherokee. I thought I had the fix figured out for the problem on my last video, which was not wanting to start after the vehicle's been warmed up and stuff like that. A lot of people are having that problem, and I did a video based on what I was told it was from the dealer, and it acted right for a couple weeks is the reason I did the video, but in the long run it went back to doing the same thing. But I have got it figured out this time. I actually got away from the dealer and took it to somebody reputable other than a dealer that could explain things for me. So basically what this video is for, this is a 3.7 liter '07 Grand Cherokee. I think it happened in a lot of different engine models and things like that as well, but what this is for is a crank no start issue once the engine running temperature is up to optimum and you park the vehicle, walk away from it, and come back and it won't start. It'll crank but not start. That's the issue I'm doing this about. And also you may even see on the gauge cluster transmission over temp or something along those lines, but you never get an engine light for, say, a cam sensor or anything like that. Now, the cam and crank sensors have both been replaced on this vehicle, and let's see what else has been done. It's been to the dealer 3 times for them to quote unquote diagnose the vehicle, which, yeah, they may have a $30,000 scan tool, but they still couldn't find this simple problem because there's no sensor on the actual problem area to be able to determine that's what's happening. So let's get right into it. It's definitely going to be under here. The main problem, and it's going to sound crazy, a lot of you guys that are older school mechanics will know exactly what I'm talking about when I say these 2 words, but it's vapor lock. It's exactly what it is, and most modern vehicles you don't hear about that because on these newer fuel injection vehicles you've got what's called a fuel rail and injectors in the whole 9 yards. Okay, that eliminated a lot of problems from the old style motors, but at the same time it made its own new problem. Most of your modern vehicles have what's called a purge solenoid, which is somewhere on that fuel system. A lot of the times it's on that fuel rail somewhere, and basically what happens is once ignition power is taken away or some kind of trigger is set, I'm not sure how it is for each vehicle, but once you're basically once the key is removed, the ignition is turned off, it starts a timer in a sense, and after a certain amount of time that automatic purge solenoid will purge that hot fuel that's in the fuel rails and actually send it back to the tank. And for some ungodly reason, I don't know if it was a cost-cutting type thing or what happened, but for some ungodly reason Chrysler decided not to put a purge solenoid on these motors from '07 to 10. Okay, so if your Grand Cherokee is anywhere that year range and you've got this motor in it, or as far as I've heard any other motor for that matter, you're going to have this problem, and this is what's going on. They did not put a purge solenoid on the fuel system to send that hot fuel back to the tank. And then what happens is these engine bays are sealed pretty tight, especially if you've got the skid pan on below, the plastic skid pan that comes underneath it. I've got that off of mine right now just so it can breathe a little better. I know it's not recommended due to other reasons such as corrosion, things like that, but I had to get some air moving through this engine bay. And once you've got that skid pan on and everything around the motor, it stays too tight and too hot, and once the vehicle's shut off, you don't have your electric fan running, you don't have anything running, and that heat just builds and it sits in this engine bay and it soaks, what they call heat soak. It actually soaks into these metal components and causes that fuel in that fuel rail to get too hot and actually turn to vapor. In turn, it will not go through the injectors, it will not run. Now, here's a trick, and this is what I want you to do And keep in mind and keep the tools with you to do this in the event you get caught out. Say you're at the grocery store, or you're way away from home and on vacation or whatever, and this happens to you, there's an easy fix for this. All you need is preferably a rag of some kind, paper towel, napkin, whatever you can find, old t-shirt, whatever you need, and a flathead screwdriver, okay? And get you back on the road temporarily. Now what you want to do is, if this happens to you, come over to the passenger side. I'm at the passenger side of the vehicle, okay? And just in below, here's your cross member going over the top of the engine. And right down in here, there's a Schrader valve cap. This Schrader valve is on the fuel rail, okay? And in the event this happens to you, simply unscrew this cap. Let me get my arm positioned better, sorry. Unscrew this cap, and you'll see there's a Schrader valve under it, okay? That one right there. Take your screwdriver, wrap your rag around it. Sorry, it's a little shaky, folks. And push the center cert of that Schrader valve in just a touch, just like if you were letting air out of the tire. It's the same setup. And you want to purge that, and you'll feel some hot gas on your hands, and you'll get gas on you, okay? On your hands and stuff. But you'll feel that hot gas soaking that rag, and once that gas feels like it starts to cool down just a touch, stop. Okay, basically all you need to do is purge it for just a split second, because it won't take long to soak that rag. And then screw your cap back on, and then it should start just fine, I promise you. Basically what you're doing there is you're allowing that hot fuel and those vapor lock gases to escape that fuel rail, and then in turn fresh fuel comes in behind it. What I recommend to do afterwards, just to let the system kind of catch up, is when you go to start the vehicle after doing that, turn the key to on and let it sit for just a minute. Let that fuel pump prime everything back up. Chances are it's not going to have affected it that bad, but it's just a good exercise to get in the habit of. Now, as far as a permanent fix, I can't think of anything. I mean, I've looked online for aftermarket purge solenoids that I can put on and do it myself, basically, and set my own system up. But then again, you've got to tie into ignition and all those things. Or, I mean, something as simple as a screw-on valve that you can put onto that Schrader valve permanently and run a hose to the ground, so you don't have to get gas all over you every time that happens. You know, kind of be creative in your own way on how to figure that out. I can't find anything short of a screwdriver. I mean, I've talked to everybody. I've looked online. I've talked to mechanics and stuff that have been doing this for years, and they tell me that there's really not anything that will, number one, thread onto that style thread of Schrader valve, and the number two, there's no automatic purge solenoids that are aftermarket that will thread on top of it to do the same job. So, and as far as trying to find a fuel rail through Chrysler that already has one on it that you can just swap out, forget about it. They never made it. It doesn't exist. Like I said, from 07 to 10, they didn't even put them on here. So there's not going to be a secondary form of fuel rail that you can just go get from Chrysler and fix the problem. Unfortunately, they didn't even produce it. It's not on any of their vehicles from 07 to 10. So in my opinion, this is something Chrysler needs to address, and I've opened up a case study with them. I've done everything I know to do as far as making them aware of the situation. I even got to the point my dealership told me, you're better off just to go through Chrysler and talk to their engineers and figure out what's going on. And the dealership was going to charge me $200 an hour for a minimum of 4 hours to try to figure out what's wrong with it. And it literally took this other person I took it to about 2 hours to figure it out. He did some old school mechanic tracing on it and found it right away. But anyway, that's what's happening to you folks. It's not a big deal. And another thing I want to say, if you're new to these vehicles and you just got a vehicle like this, 07 to 10 Grand Cherokee, and this happens to you for the first time, I cannot stress this enough. If it doesn't start the first time, stop. Okay? Do not try to crank it and crank it and crank it. Let me tell you why. It'll burn that starter up in a heartbeat. I had that happen to me. Wasn't aware of what was going on. I thought I simply had a you know, I knew I had a fuel issue, but I didn't know it was vapor locked. So I thought running the starter a few times, trying to crank it a few times would eventually let that fuel pump prime everything back up and be on our way. I ended up burning the starter up. And trust me, it's not a fun experience when you're sitting in the middle of a parking lot way away from home and you're sitting in the cab of the vehicle and you smell electrical burn. Then all of a sudden you pop the hood and smoke is, you know, billowing out of the hood. And you got a starter pretty well on the verge of being on fire. It's not a fun experience. So if it doesn't crank the first time, stop. Do the trick I showed you in the beginning of the video and come over here and purge this solenoid and then try to start it again, okay? Now, if any of you have any ideas on a permanent fix for this or even a better temporary fix, please put them in the comments. I'm looking for help myself, folks. I'm just trying to explain to you what the problem is and what you can do to temporarily fix it. Now, some of you may already notice this since I've been standing here, but one thing I was recommended to do to attempt to eliminate not necessarily the issue, but kind of slow it down and make it less oh, well, how do you say that, less anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Make it happen less often. Yeah, there we go. Take some kind of clips. A lot of people will say wooden clothesline clips work really well. Put some clips on your fuel rail, just like this. This is a binder clip, okay? And it's clipped around the fuel rail. I've got 2 or 3 of them on there in different places and stuff like that. Basically what that does, and if you've ever been into CB radios and stuff like that, any kind of electrical equipment, you'll know what this is. It acts like a heat sink, basically like fins. And it allows that heat to transfer out of that fuel rail, that thick wall tubing of that fuel rail, and out through the prongs, the thinner prongs of those clips. And it'll cool those clips, though, just the little bit of breeze that's in the engine bay when the air is blowing up underneath. Again, I took the skid pan off, so that little bit of breeze that's coming up will cool those clips off, and then transfer that cooler temperature back down to the fuel rail. And it does help some. It didn't eliminate the problem, but it does help some. Now, especially on really hot days, it's still going to do it. There's no way around it. But in the cooler time, like in the fall and the spring, and even especially the winter, of course, but the fall and the spring when it's a little bit cooler out, it pretty well eliminates the problem just doing that little simple trick there. But I just wanted to make this quick video just so you all who are having the problem know what it is and know a temporary fix. If you have any comments or questions, please put them below in the comments section. I'm just here to help people out. If I'm wrong on something, or if you got a better idea than what I've got, please feel free to share it. I'm not an expert by any means. I can figure this stuff out and I can work on anything, but I don't consider myself an expert. I'm not ICAR or ASE certified or anything. So, but that's pretty well it, folks. If you wouldn't mind, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I should have more videos of this coming up as I pursue this and try to figure it out. It might be a good idea, if you're having the problem, even though you've seen this video and you know pretty well how to fix it, open up a case with Chrysler. Just call their customer service and tell them you've got a problem with the vehicle, and they'll open up a case on that specific vehicle with your name on it, and they'll pass it along to their engineering division or whatever, and they'll try to get it figured out. I actually did get phone calls back from one of their engineers, and me and him talked for about an hour and a half on the phone one day, banging our heads up against the wall. That's before I figured out the vapor lock problem. Now, how he couldn't figure that out, I don't know, but he wasn't looking at the vehicle at the time. But anyway, that's it, folks. Like I said, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and y'all have a good one.